The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, cutting through the usual radio chatter that filled Earth's communications centers. Ambassador Heinwoo Kim was drinking his third cup of coffee when his assistant burst into his office, holding a datapad with shaking hands. "Sir, you need to see this," she said. Her voice barely above a whisper. Kim took the pad and read the message twice before the words truly sank in. The Galactic Council, a group he had only heard about in classified reports, was inviting humanity to peace talks. Not just any talks, but formal negotiations that could determine Earth's future among the stars. The message was formal and cold. It addressed humanity as the recent arrivals and spoke of necessary discussions regarding territorial boundaries and acceptable conduct. Kim had been a diplomat long enough to read between the lines. This was not a friendly invitation between equals. Within hours, Kim found himself in the Pentagon's secure briefing room, surrounded by Earth's top military and scientific minds. General Patricia Hayes, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, looked as skeptical as Kim felt. "They want to meet at something called Nexus Prime," Kim explained to the room. "It's apparently a neutral station in what they call the core sectors." Dr. So-Young Park, Earth's leading expert on alien cultures, leaned forward. She had spent years studying the limited information humanity had gathered about their galactic neighbors. "This is unprecedented," she said. "According to our intelligence, the Galactic Council has never invited a species to join them. They usually just absorb them." "What do you mean by absorb?" asked Captain Jin-Ho Lee. The decorated war veteran who would lead the security detail. Dr. Park pulled up a holographic display, showing what little they knew about the galaxy's political structure. 17 species make up the Council, but we know of at least 30 species that used to exist independently. The others just disappeared from the records after first contact. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. Kim studied the faces around the table. These were people who had seen humanity through countless crises. Wars, natural disasters, and now first contact with hostile alien civilizations. They all carried the same expression of grim determination that had seen humanity through its darkest hours. "We have to go," Kim said finally. "If we refuse, they might decide we're hostile. If we accept, at least we get a chance to see what we're dealing with." The preparation took 3 weeks. Earth's best minds worked around the clock to prepare. For every possibility, Dr. Park assembled cultural briefings on each known Council species. Captain Lee drilled his security team on new protocols for alien environments. Kim practiced speeches in 17 different scenarios, from best case to absolute worst. The journey to Nexus Prime took humanity's newest and fastest ship, the Soul, 12 days through jump space. It was humanity's first voyage beyond their local cluster, and every member of the delegation felt the weight of representing their entire species. Nexus Prime was unlike anything they had imagined. The station stretched for hundreds of kilometers, a massive ring of gleaming metal and transparent aluminum that housed millions of beings from across the galaxy. Ships of impossible designs docked at its ports, some so alien that human eyes struggled to understand their basic structure. The Soul was assigned a small docking bay in what was clearly the least prestigious section of the station. As they disembarked, Kim noticed that other ships in their area were small, outdated, and bore the markings of species he did not recognize. Their escort was a tall, thin being with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. It introduced itself as Administrative Aide Calix and spoke in perfect, if cold, English. "The Council will see you in 1 hour," it said without any greeting. "You will follow protocol strictly. No deviations will be tolerated." The walk through Nexus Prime's corridors was both fascinating and intimidating. Kim saw species he had only heard about in intelligence reports. The proud, bird-like Avari walked in formation, their feathers gleaming with metallic sheens. The massive, elephant-like Turani moved slowly but commanded respect from every other species. The sleek, cat-like Zephyrians prowled the corridors with obvious authority, but Kim also noticed something else. Many species they passed looked tired, defeated. Their clothing was plain, their movements careful and submissive. These were not equals in this galactic community. The council chamber was enormous, designed to intimidate. 17 elevated platforms surrounded a small area in the center where a simple human-sized table and chairs waited. Each platform held representatives of the council species, all looking down at the space where humanity would sit. As Kim and his delegation took their seats, he felt like a defendant in a courtroom. Dr. Park sat to his left, her tablet ready with cultural notes. Captain Lee sat to his right, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. The session began with Chancellor Thex of the Villari Confederation speaking from the highest platform. The Villari were humanoid but taller and thinner, with pale skin that seemed to glow under the chamber's lights. Vex's voice carried the authority of someone used to absolute obedience. "Humans," Vex began, managing to make their species name sound like an insult. "You have achieved faster than light travel and begun expanding beyond your system. This expansion must now be regulated." Kim stood to respond, but Vex continued without pause. "The galaxy operates under specific rules. Order must be maintained. Your species has demonstrated concerning aggressive tendencies in your brief time among civilized worlds." "Concerning aggressive tendencies?" Kim asked, his diplomatic training keeping his voice level. "Could you be more specific?" High Speaker Krill of the Zephyrian Alliance, a sleek being with silver fur and piercing green eyes, leaned forward. "Your species' history speaks for itself. Constant warfare, environmental destruction, rapid, uncontrolled expansion. These are not the traits of a civilized people." Dr. Park whispered urgently in Kim's ear, sharing something from her cultural files. Kim nodded and addressed the council. "Every species goes through growing pains. Humanity has learned from its mistakes and is working to build a better future. We came here hoping to learn from your experiences and contribute to galactic peace." The reaction was immediate. Several council members made sounds that Kim's translator rendered as laughter, but the tone was mocking and cruel. "Contribute?" Chancellor Thex asked. "Young species, you misunderstand your position. You are here to receive instruction, not to offer contributions." That was when they brought out the document that would change everything. A massive holographic display materialized above the human delegation, showing page after page of dense legal text. The header read, "Terran Compliance Accords." Kim felt his blood run cold as he began to read. This was not a peace treaty between equals. This was a surrender document designed to strip humanity of everything that made them independent. The galaxy's true nature was finally revealed, and Ambassador Hyung-woo Kim realized that humanity had walked into a trap that threatened their very existence as a free species. The second day of negotiations began with what Chancellor Thex called educational presentations. Ambassador Kim sat with his team as alien after alien took turns explaining why humanity needed to be controlled. The first speaker was a Tyranni general named Borth. The massive elephant-like being stood on his platform and displayed images of human cities, human art, and human technology on the chamber's main screen. "Look at their architecture," Borth rumbled, his trunk pointing at pictures of New York and Seoul. "Chaotic, no planning. They build tall buildings that block sunlight from smaller ones. This shows a lack of respect for harmony and order." "Doctor?" So-Young Park gripped her tablet tighter. She had spent years studying these alien cultures, hoping to find common ground. Instead, she was watching them tear apart everything humanity had built. "Their art is even worse," continued a Zephyrian speaker named Vex. The cat-like being's green eyes gleamed with disgust as human. Paintings and sculptures appeared on screen. Primitive emotions, violence. They paint wars and sadness. Civilized beings create art that brings peace and unity, not these disturbing images. Kim wanted to stand and defend the beauty he saw in human creativity, but Captain Jin-Ho Lee placed a warning hand on his arm. They needed to hear everything before responding. The worst came when they began discussing human technology. A Villari scientist named Dr. Zinth took the platform and began listing humanity's achievements with obvious contempt. "Their computers are crude copies of designs we perfected centuries ago. Dr. Zinth said. Their ships use basic fusion drives that we abandoned for being too dangerous. Their weapons are simple projectile systems that show no understanding of advanced physics. Counselor Minji Choi, the legal expert on Kim's team, was frantically taking notes. She had spent the morning reading through the Terran Compliance Accords and had found problems with almost every section. Ambassador, she whispered urgently, these accords are not just unfair. They are designed to make us completely dependent on the Council for everything. Kim nodded but kept his face neutral as the presentations continued. Colonel Tae-Hyun Yoon, the military attaché, was studying the alien delegates with the eye of a career soldier. What he saw worried him. Sir, Yoon whispered, these beings have been in power too long. They think like politicians, not warriors. They have forgotten what real conflict looks like. The educational presentations lasted 4 hours. When they finally ended, Chancellor Thex stood and addressed the human delegation directly. Now that you understand your position in the galactic community, we can discuss the terms of your integration, Thex said. The word integration sounded pleasant, but Kim knew it meant something else entirely. High speaker. Krill activated a new display showing the specific terms of the Terran Compliance Accords. Kim felt his stomach drop as he read each. Requirement. First, humanity would surrender 90% of their military vessels. They could keep only basic system defense ships, and these would be inspected regularly by Council forces. Second, all human technological development would be overseen by Council scientists. No new research could begin without approval. No new designs could be built without permission. Third, human population would be limited to current levels. No new colonies could be established. No expansion beyond their current 12 worlds would be allowed. Fourth, humanity would pay tribute to the Council. This tribute would include rare metals, manufactured goods, and a percentage of their food production. These terms are generous, Chancellor Thex said. Many species receive much harsher restrictions when they join the galactic community. Dr. Yunesio Kang, the physicist on Kim's team, stared at the technology restrictions in horror. She understood exactly what they meant. Humanity would be frozen at their current level forever, unable to advance or grow. Kim stood slowly. Chancellor Thex, these terms seem very one-sided. What does humanity receive in return for these contributions? The question seemed to surprise the Council. Several members made those mocking laughter sounds again. You receive the protection of the Council, Krill said. You receive access to galactic trade routes. You receive the knowledge that you will not be destroyed by hostile forces. Hostile forces? Captain Lee asked, speaking for the first time. The galaxy is dangerous, Chancellor Thex replied. Species that refuse Council protection often face unfortunate accidents. Pirates attack their ships? Their colonies suffer mysterious disasters. It is much safer to accept our guidance. The threat was clear, but Thex delivered it with a smile that made Kim's skin crawl. We need time to study these terms, Kim said diplomatically. Of course, Thex agreed. You have until tomorrow to sign the accords. After that, the offer may become less generous. That evening, the human delegation gathered in their assigned quarters. The rooms were small and uncomfortable, clearly designed for much smaller beings. They had to assume they were being watched and listened to, so they spoke carefully. This is extortion, Counselor Choi said quietly. They are offering us slavery and calling it protection. The technology restrictions alone would end human progress forever, Dr. Kong added. We would become a planet of farmers and miners, serving their needs. Colonel Yoon had been studying the security arrangements around the station. Their guards are soft, he reported. They have been in power so long that they have forgotten how to fight. But their numbers are overwhelming? Dr. Park looked devastated. I thought we could find common ground. I thought we could build relationships with these species. But they see us as nothing more than useful animals to be trained. Kim sat in silence, thinking about Earth and the billions of people depending on his decisions. Finally he spoke. They made one mistake, he said quietly. They think we are desperate. They think we came here because we need them. Don't we? Captain Lee asked. Kim shook his head. Humanity survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. That would have ended other species. We reached the stars without their help. We built our civilization without their guidance. We do not need them. But they have 17 worlds, Ambassador, Colonel Yoon pointed out. We have 12. Kim smiled for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime. Numbers only matter if you are willing to use them. These beings have been comfortable for too long. They have forgotten what humans do when cornered. The next morning brought the final session. Chancellor Thex and the Council expected to watch humanity sign away their freedom. Instead, they were about to learn their first lesson about human pride and the terrible mistake they had made in underestimating Earth's children. The final session began exactly as Chancellor Thex had planned. The 17 council members sat on their elevated platforms, looking down at the human delegation with expressions of bored superiority. They expected this to be a simple signing ceremony followed by humanity's grateful acceptance of their new role as servants. Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim walked into the chamber carrying a simple briefcase. Inside were the signed Terran compliance accords that would end humanity's independence forever. At least that was what the council believed. Humans, Chancellor Thex began, his voice carrying the tone of a teacher addressing slow children. We trust you have had sufficient time to understand the wisdom of our offer. The galaxy awaits your acceptance into the civilized community. Kim stood and opened his briefcase. The chamber fell silent as every council member leaned forward to witness humanity's surrender. Dr. So-Young Park sat beside him, her face carefully neutral. Captain Jin-Ho Lee remained perfectly still, his eyes watching every alien in the room. Chancellor Thex, Kim said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. We have indeed spent considerable time reviewing your terms. Excellent, Thex replied. Present the signed accords and we can begin your integration immediately. Kim reached into his briefcase and pulled out the thick document. The holographic displays around the chamber showed the first page, ready to broadcast humanity's submission across the galaxy. Council members began making please sounds in their various languages. Then Kim did something that no one expected. He began tearing the document in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. Every council member froze in shock as Kim methodically tore the accords into smaller and smaller pieces. When he finished, he let the pieces fall to the floor like snow. What are you doing? Chancellor Thex stammered, his composed mask. Slipping for the first time, Kim looked up at the 17 platforms surrounding him. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of humanity's entire history behind it. We came here in good faith, Kim began. We hope to find friends among the stars. We dreamed of sharing knowledge and building a better future together. Instead, we found bullies demanding that we wear chains made of gold. High Speaker Krill of the Zephyrians stood up on his platform, his green eyes blazing with anger. You dare insult the council? You forget your place, human. No, Kim replied, his voice growing stronger. You forget yours. You sit on your platforms believing that might makes right. You think that because you are 17 and we are 1, we must bow to your demands. But you have made a fundamental error in your calculations. Dr. Park stood beside Kim, her earlier disappointment replaced by fierce pride. Captain Lee rose as well, his military bearing making several council members step back nervously. What error? Chancellor Thex demanded. Kim smiled, and something in that expression made the temperature in the chamber seem to drop several degrees. You assume that we need you, Kim said. You believe that because we are new to space travel, we are weak. You think that because we seek peace, we cannot make war. You are wrong on every count. The chamber erupted in angry sounds from multiple species. Council members began shouting in their various languages, but Kim continued speaking, his voice cutting through the noise. Humanity has faced extinction before and survived. We have endured ice ages that lasted thousands of years. We have survived plagues that killed half our population. We have fought wars that burned continents and still emerged stronger, and we did all of this without your help. Counselor Minji Choi stood and activated her own datapad. Legal documents. began appearing on the chamber's displays, causing confused murmurs from the council. "We have also reviewed galactic law," Troy announced. "According to the neutral space accords that establish this station, no species can be compelled to join. The council, membership must be voluntary." "This is voluntary," Vex protested. "Coercion through threats of violence is not voluntary," Troy replied calmly. "Your own legal precedents support this interpretation." Colonel Tae-Hyun Yoon activated his communicator, sending a coded message to the Soul. "Within moments, Captain." Lee received a reply that made him nod grimly. "Ambassador," Lee announced, "our ship is ready for immediate departure." The council members began talking frantically among themselves. This was unprecedented. No species had ever rejected council membership. The entire galactic order was built on the assumption that weaker civilizations would submit to stronger ones. Kim began walking toward the chamber's exit, his team falling in behind him. As they reached the doors, he turned back to face the 17 platforms one final time. "We return to Earth with a message for our people," Kim declared. "Humanity will chart its own course among the stars. We will build our own future. We will defend our own worlds. And we will do it all without your permission. You cannot survive alone," Krill shouted. "The galaxy is hostile to those without protection." Kim paused at the threshold. "Protection from whom?" "You are the only hostiles we have encountered." "You will regret this decision," Chancellor Vex warned, his voice shaking with rage. "When the pirates come for your worlds, when disasters strike, your colonies, when your primitive technology fails you, remember that you chose isolation over wisdom." "We will remember," Kim agreed. "But perhaps you should consider what you are choosing as well. You are rejecting the friendship of a species that has never known defeat when fighting for their freedom. You are making enemies of people who turn impossible odds into victories. History will judge which of us made the wiser choice." The human delegation walked out of the chamber, leaving the Galactic Council in stunned silence. Behind them, 17 species that had ruled the galaxy for centuries struggled to understand what had just happened. On the Sol, General Subin Jang received Kim's full report within minutes of their departure. The message was immediately transmitted to Earth through quantum communications, reaching President Haijin Nam's desk before the human delegation had even cleared Nexus Prime's docking bay. The President's response was brief and decisive. "All diplomatic missions recalled. Borders closed. Begin the long preparation." Admiral Won-Sik Lim received his orders an hour later. Every human ship beyond Earth's local cluster was to return home immediately. All contact with alien civilizations was to cease. Humanity was going dark. As the Sol jumped back toward Earth, the Galactic Council sat in emergency session, trying to understand how their perfect plan had failed. They had expected submission and received defiance. They had offered slavery and been rejected with dignity. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's rulers faced an opponent who refused to play by their rules. Humanity was about to show them what that meant. 3 years passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. For the first time in recorded galactic history, an entire species had simply vanished from interstellar politics. Chancellor Vex sat in his private office on Nexus Prime, staring at yet another report about the human situation. The document was frustratingly short because there was almost nothing to report. Humanity had kept their word about isolation. No human ships had been seen outside their local cluster. No human diplomats appeared at trade stations. No human merchants offered their goods at galactic markets. "They will return," Vex told himself for the 1000th time. They must return. But as months turned to years, doubt began creeping into the Chancellor's mind. The Galactic Council had ruled for centuries by making other species dependent on them. Trade, technology, protection, everything flowed through Council channels. No civilization had ever survived alone for this long. Dr. Zinth, the Valari scientist who had mocked human technology 3 years ago, entered Vex's office carrying a datapad full of disturbing information. "Chancellor," Dr. Zinth said nervously, "we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Vex asked without looking up from his reports. Our technological advancement has slowed significantly since the humans left, Dr. Zinth explained. We used to make breakthrough discoveries every few months. Now we are lucky to achieve minor improvements once a year. Vex finally looked at his scientist. Explain. Dr. Zinth activated his datapad, showing charts and graphs that painted a troubling picture. Before the humans appeared, we advanced slowly but steadily. When they arrived and we began monitoring their technology, our advancement rate increased dramatically. We told ourselves it was natural evolution of our research, but But what? But the pattern suggests we were learning from them. Their crude, primitive designs actually contained insights we had missed. When they disappeared, those insights stopped coming. Vex felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. That is impossible. Human technology was centuries behind ours. Was it? Dr. Zinth asked quietly. Or were we so convinced of our superiority that we failed to see the truth? Similar reports were coming from across the galaxy. High Speaker Krill of the Zephyrians was dealing with trade route problems that had never existed before. The efficient shipping networks that connected Council worlds were breaking down in ways that made no sense. Admiral Kess, Krill's military advisor, stood before a holographic display showing galactic trade flows. Red indicators marked dozens of problem areas. The patterns are clear, Kess reported. Human merchant ships used to fill gaps in our trade networks. They carried goods between worlds that we considered unprofitable routes. Without them, those connections have failed. Send Council ships to cover those routes, Krill ordered. We tried, Kess replied. Council vessels are too large and expensive for small cargo runs. The humans used smaller, more efficient ships that could make profits on routes we ignored. We designed our fleet for large-scale operations, not flexible commerce. Meanwhile, on the war-torn border between the Turani and Avari territories, General Borth was discovering another problem with humanity's absence. The two species had been engaged in a minor territorial dispute for months, the kind of conflict that usually ended quickly with council mediation, but the mediator they had always relied on was gone. Ambassador Kim and his team had resolved dozens of similar disputes over the years, using negotiation techniques that somehow satisfied both sides. Without human diplomats, the small conflict was growing into something much more dangerous. Why can we not simply tell them what to do? General Borth asked his aide. Because the Avari refused to accept our judgment, the aide replied. They say, we favor the Turani because of old trade agreements. When humans mediated, both sides trusted them because they had no stake in the outcome. Back on Earth, humanity was not idle during these silent years. President Haijin Nam had authorized the largest scientific and military development program in human history. Every resource Earth could spare was dedicated to what they called the long preparation. Dr. Young Ho Shin led the civilian research efforts from a massive facility built beneath the Swiss Alps. The complex housed 10,000 of humanity's brightest minds, all working toward a single goal, making sure humanity would never again be threatened by alien powers. We cannot match their numbers, Dr. Shin explained to his research teams. We cannot match their industrial capacity. So we must be smarter, faster, and more creative than they ever imagined possible. The results were remarkable. Cut off from alien technology, human scientists had been forced to find their own solutions to interstellar travel, communication, and defense. What they discovered surprised even themselves. Marshal Bahram Kim, no relation to the former ambassador, commanded the military side of the long preparation. Where civilian scientists focused on breakthrough discoveries, Marshal Kim focused on applying those discoveries to defend humanity's worlds. The aliens think in terms of massive fleets and overwhelming force, Marshal Kim told her officers. They fight like they negotiate with arrogance and assumption of superiority. That gives us advantages they cannot imagine. The new Human Defense Initiative developed technologies that Council scientists would have considered impossible. Ships that could phase through solid matter. Weapons that manipulated gravity itself. defense systems that seemed to violate known physics. Intelligence Director Sang-Woo Park coordinated humanity's information-gathering efforts. While Earth appeared silent to the galaxy, Park's agents were everywhere, watching and learning from the shadows. "The Council is fracturing," Park reported to President Nam during one of their weekly briefings. "Without our mediation, old conflicts are resurging. Without our trade connections, their economy is showing strain. Without our technological insights, their advancement has stalled. Are they planning military action against us?" President Nam asked. "Not yet," Park replied. "They are still convinced we will return begging for help. But that confidence is shaking. Some council members are beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about their assumptions." The most dangerous development was happening on the Galactic Rim, where the aggressive Carnath Empire was testing council defenses. For decades, careful diplomacy and the threat of overwhelming force had kept the Carnath contained. But the diplomatic solutions had often been crafted by human negotiators, and the military strategies had been influenced by human tactical advisors. Without those elements, the Council's responses to Carnath provocations were becoming predictable and ineffective. The Empire was growing bolder with each successful probe, back on Nexus Prime. Chancellor Thex was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. The reports on his desk painted a clear picture of a galactic order that was slowly crumbling without the humans they had so casually dismissed. The most troubling report came from his own intelligence services. 3 council ships had ventured too close to human space in the past month. All 3 had simply disappeared, no wreckage. No distress signals, no trace whatsoever. "What are they doing out there?" Thex asked his advisors. None of them had an answer, and that terrified them more than any alien fleet. The galaxy erupted into chaos on a cold morning when the Carnath Empire launched their full-scale invasion. 50,000 warships poured across the galactic rim like a black tide, overwhelming 3 council border systems in the first week. Chancellor Thex stood in Nexus Prime's command center, watching red indicators spread across the galactic map like a disease. The Carnath had studied council tactics for decades, and without human military advisors to provide unexpected strategies, every council response was predictable and ineffective. "Admiral Vorth's fleet has been destroyed," reported General Kex, his voice shaking with disbelief. The Carnath anticipated every maneuver. It was as if they knew our battle plans before we did. High Speaker Krill of the Zephyrians appeared on the communication screen, his usually composed features twisted with panic. "The Carnath are using new weapons. Some kind of phase technology that passes through our shields. Our defenses are useless." Lex felt the weight of 3 years of mistakes crushing down on him. The humans had walked away warning that the galaxy was becoming more hostile, not less. They had been right about everything. How long until they reached the core worlds? Lex asked. "At current speed, 6 months?" General Kex replied. "Unless we can find a way to stop them." That was when Vex made the decision that would echo through galactic history. Prepare a diplomatic ship. Set course for Earth. The journey to human space took 10 days through jump space. Vex traveled aboard the Council flagship Harmony, accompanied by representatives from all 17 member species. They came not as conquerors offering terms, but as supplicants begging for help. As they approached Earth's solar system, the differences from 3 years ago became immediately apparent. Where once there had been simple patrol ships, now there was a defensive grid of impossible complexity. Geometric structures that hurt to look at directly floated in perfect formation around Earth. Energy readings that should have been impossible pulse through space like a heartbeat. "Chancellor," reported the ship's sensor officer, "we are being scanned by technologies I cannot identify. Our shields they are being examined at the molecular level. Are we in danger?" Vex asked. "I do not know," the officer replied. "Honestly, these readings suggest capabilities far beyond anything in our databases." A new voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect Velari. "Council vessel Harmony, you are entering sovereign human space. State your business." The voice belonged to Fleet Admiral Dongwu Song, commander of humanity's new stellar navy. His ship, the Inchin, materialized next to the Harmony without any warning. One moment the space was empty, the next moment a vessel twice the size of the Council flagship hung beside them like a sleeping giant. "This is Chancellor Thex of the Galactic Council," Thex responded, trying to keep his voice steady. "We request an audience with Earth's leadership on a matter of galactic importance." "Follow the designated course," Admiral Song replied. "Any deviation will be considered hostile." The flight path led them past shipyards that made Thex's mind reel. Hundreds of vessels under construction, each one incorporating technologies the Council had never seen. Workers in powered suits moved through, space-like dancers building ships that seemed to bend reality around them. Earth itself was transformed. Cities now reached toward the stars, connected by transportation systems that moved faster than thought. The blue-green world Thex remembered was now encased in a network of orbital platforms that hummed with barely contained energy. They were brought to Geneva, to a building that looked simple from the outside but contained technologies that made Nexus Prime seem primitive. President Na Young-cho waited for them in a conference room that somehow felt larger inside than outside. Cho had been a junior staffer during the original peace talks. Now she was Earth's leader, and the 3 years of isolation had changed her just as much as they had changed her world. She wore a simple business suit, but the confidence in her bearing made it clear who held the power in this room. "Chancellor Thex," President Cho said, her voice polite but cold. "This is unexpected. 3 years ago, you told us we would regret our decision to refuse council membership. Are you here to gloat?" Diplomat Jun Sco Lee, who had been Ambassador Kim's aide during the original talks, sat beside the president. He activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy, with red zones marking Karnath advance. "Perhaps," Lee suggested, "they have come to discuss recent developments in galactic politics." Thex felt his pride crumbling as he looked at the display. The Karnath advance was worse than he had admitted to his own people. Half the galaxy was already under enemy control. "President Cho," Thex began, his voice barely above a whisper, "the Galactic Council requires assistance." "Requires?" "President," Cho asked, raising an eyebrow. "That is an interesting choice of words." High Speaker Krill, who had traveled with the delegation, stepped forward. "The Karnath Empire threatens all civilized life. This is not a council problem. This is a galactic crisis." "And what does the Council offer in exchange for human assistance?" asked Admiral Song, who had joined the meeting. The question hung in the air like a sword. Thex realized with growing horror that humanity held all the cards now. They were not desperate refugees begging for help. They were the galaxy's only hope, and they knew it. We offer full council membership," Thex said weakly. President Cho laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You offer us what you tried to force on us 3 years ago? Membership in an organization that is currently losing a war? What do you want?" Krill asked desperately. President Cho stood and walked to the window, looking out at Earth's transformed landscape. When she spoke, her words were measured and final. "First, full recognition of human sovereignty. No restrictions, no oversight, no interference in our affairs." "Agreed," Thex said immediately. "Second, immediate release of all human civilians detained by Council forces over the past 3 years." Thex's stomach dropped. The Council had indeed detained human ships, claiming they were protecting them. "Agreed." Third, reparations for 3 years of economic warfare and illegal detention. "How much?" Krill asked. "We will discuss that later," President Cho replied. Fourth, restructuring of the Council to include human representation proportional to our contribution to galactic security. And fifth, she continued, turning back to face the alien delegation, a formal apology from the Council for their treatment of humanity during the original negotiations. The conference room fell silent. In galactic history, no power had ever been forced to apologize to another. The very concept was alien to beings who had ruled through fear and intimidation for centuries. Chancellor Thex looked at his fellow council members. He saw the same defeat in their eyes that he felt in his heart. The proud species that had dismissed humanity as primitive, barbarians now faced a choice: swallow their pride or watch their civilization burn. Chancellor, President Cho said gently, the choice is yours, but choose quickly. Every day you delay, more worlds fall to the Karnath. Vex closed his eyes and spoke the words that would change the galaxy forever. The Galactic Council recognizes our mistake. We saw your desire for peace and mistook it for weakness. We saw your offers of friendship and mistook them for desperation. We saw your restraint and mistook it for inability. Humanity, we were wrong. We need you. President Cho nodded slowly. In that case, Chancellor, let us discuss how humanity can help save the galaxy you nearly destroyed.